in the freezing winds of Eastern Europe. Long before the world knew the true power of the M1 Abrams, a quiet confidence existed inside Soviet tank crews. For decades they had been trained to believe that the T-72 was the unstoppable fist of the motherland, a machine built for shock, speed, and overwhelming firepower. Soviet commanders told their crews that no Western tank could match the T-72, not in strength, not in armor, not in fire rate. And so, whenever the name Abrams was mentioned, Soviet tankers laughed. To them, the American tank was nothing more than an over-engineered, overweight, fuel-hungry machine that would break down before it ever reached the battlefield. Everything changed the day they faced each other for the first time. It was 1991, deep in the open deserts where the horizon looked like an endless sheet of gold. The Gulf War had forced modern armored warfare into reality. Soviet-built T-72s, exported and operated by Iraqi crews, moved across the terrain with the same confidence Soviet doctrine had drilled into them for years. They believed they were invincible. But hidden far beyond their field of view, American M1 Abrams units waited with a different kind of silence, calculated, patient, and deadly. The T-72's sights struggled in the desert heat. Mirage effects twisted the air, making targets shimmer. But the Abrams didn't rely on the same outdated optical systems. Behind its thermal sight, the desert looked crystal clear. Tanks, trucks, soldiers, everything stood out like glowing silhouettes, impossible to hide. And so, while the T-72 crews scanned the sand with desperate eyes, the Abrams already had them locked in. What happened next would echo through military academies for decades. At nearly 3,000 meters far beyond the T-72's effective combat range, an M1 Abrams gunner gently squeezed the trigger. The tank roared as its 120mm smoothbore gun sent a sabot round flying faster than the speed of sound. The Soviet-designed armor on the T-72, once praised as superior, might as well have been paper. In a split second, the sabot penetrated straight through the hull, slicing through steel and ammunition like a blade through cloth. The tank erupted in a fireball so bright it lit the desert around it. Before the Iraqi crew even realized they were under attack, 3 more T-72s were hit. One after another, each vanished in a cloud of burning metal before they could fire back. And still, the Abrams crews stayed silent. They didn't need to rush. They didn't need to move. Their accuracy was terrifying. Their range seemed impossible. The desert suddenly felt like a death trap to anyone sitting inside a T-72 in Soviet training halls thousands of miles away. Officers dismissed reports of the Abrams' performance. They claimed the desert gave Americans an advantage. They claimed the Iraqi crews were poorly trained. They claimed the T-72 had simply been used incorrectly. But then classified footage arrived, grainy, shaky, real. It showed a single Abrams destroying multiple T-72s from distances so far the Soviet tankers could barely believe it. Not once did the Abrams miss. Not once did it hesitate. And worst of all, not once did it take a fatal hit in return. Soviet tank commanders replayed the footage again and again in stunned silence. These were not dramatic Hollywood scenes. These were real engagements, real tanks, real crews, real results. The laughter died. Engineers who had once boasted about the T-72's armor suddenly found themselves questioned by their own superiors. How could the Abrams track, identify, and eliminate targets at distances the T-72 could not even dream of? How did its armor shrug off hits that should have destroyed it? And how did the tank, mocked for its heavy weight, move so fast across the open desert? The truth was brutal. That Abrams was not just a tank. It was an evolution of every battlefield lesson the United States had ever learned: speed, protection, accuracy, and digital fire control, all fused into one unstoppable weapon. The T-72 was a product of older thinking, built for mass production and shock warfare. But mass meant nothing when one tank could wipe out an entire platoon before they closed the distance. By the time the war ended, the myth of Soviet superiority had been shattered. Tank crews who once scoffed at the Abrams now studied it with fear and respect. The legend had changed. The jokes had died. And a new reality had taken its place. The M1 Abrams had proved a devastating truth. Sometimes a single well-designed machine can destroy an entire belief system from 3,000 meters away. The tank that Soviet crews once laughed at delivered the coldest punchline in military history.